Welcome back, everyone who was able to join or view last Thursday. I'm glad that we're back and still able to talk about this. So sorry, I'm still figuring this out from my end. Okay. Nope. Forgive me. So patient. Oh. Okay, so as I was saying, I'm really glad that this series and the way it was created was that it allowed us to sign up for an hour to try and implement some of these concepts and ideas. Today is that day that we get to do the work. So I emphasized that from the last time, that the work we do as educators for students who need equitable access to educational opportunity is a critical step in transforming a racist, classist, and ableist system, and that comes from Gash and Seidel, a 98 piece about diversity and disability. So last week, oh my goodness, sorry about the back and forth. So last week I reviewed a brief history of disability in the US and I tried to connect it to higher education as much as possible. So this is from the 80s where disability was seen as something to be hidden and to be feared, to this is even the late 80s, but a Gallaudet University student protest and deaf president now. But again, as an SLP, a speech language pathologist, I think it's fantastic that we have our current president, President Biden, is a person who stutters. So he's talked about that. So that's a communication disability, and you might have heard that or even observed that in some of his speeches lately. But again, speaking of disability, it's interesting, and I'm curious, and I hope he takes on that identity a little bit more, because it does our society to acknowledge that. So from Thursday, I then briefly reviewed two models of disability, with the social model of disability being grounded in the disability rights movements from the 60s and 70s. And as educators, we know that models can be helpful in conceptualizing and providing a framework for understanding. And so for us today and last week, these models help us in conceptualizing and providing a framework for understanding society's perceptions and actions towards individual differences in ability. So hopefully with this social model, along with that historical review, we are able to continually adjust our lens. And so to recap one last time, the anti-ableist social model removes the focus from the student that needs to be fixed by examining the social structures that prevent students from engaging in academia in a more independent, productive, included, and self-determined way. And I like this idea of determined way, in the sense of they're working towards a profession and a career, and that they're made for them. So just by making that choice, there is some determination behind that. So today, in this time, we're going to evaluate some of these different social structures in the classroom by looking at our syllabi, the way we structure our class. And again, another reminder about disability studies, in the sense that today I hope that we're inspired by disability studies and that we take this critical lens. And Linton in 98 wrote, a critical lens when it comes to disability is one where otherwise it was constricted and inadequate and inaccurate in terms of their conceptualizations of disability, and those that have dominated academic inquiry and essentially society. Then if we're critical about that, we can start to break down those barriers for our students. Oh, and this was from last week too. I had gone over some definitions of disability from the CDC, the WHO, and the ADA. And I just wanted to review the definition of disability and point out how organizations like the WHO are now approaching disability from a more social model. So I highlighted that aspect of their definition, that disability results in interaction between individuals with health conditions, as well as personal and environmental factors, including negative attitudes, inaccessible transportation, public building, and limited social support. So last week, we discussed the idea that inclusion is a way that we can go about this, but that inclusion requires radical reconceptualization of classroom culture or climate, curriculum, and pedagogy. Last week, we spent some time recognizing that there's variations that exist in human behavior, appearance, functioning, sensory acuity, and cognitive processing, and we reflected on the socially constructed meaning we attribute to those variations by starting with a reflection on how we learned what was normal. And I didn't get to these next couple slides, so I wanted to give them a second because I think they're interesting. So when our biases find comfort, and so had we not reflected first on what we think is normal, we are just not as aware of those biases. And when we find comfort in our biases and, for example, what our other colleagues might think, if they feel the same way, we can fall into that assimilation and area or consequence where it just kind of becomes the tone of our department, for example. And so these are some ways to look at the way society responds to differences. First, what's normal? And we want to be here at valuing diversity as normal, including neurodiversity and ability. But recognizing that a lot of us are kind of at this tolerant level where we're just benevolent, or again, recognizing your own department's culture or your own biases, the way you were brought up, you might even be in this assimilation consequence where it's those perspectives are seen as normal. And so another slide that we didn't get to is, and this is probably very tiny, which I'm sorry, but I will share this and you might be able to zoom in, but this pyramid of hate is what it's called. It illustrates how the escalating levels of attitudes and behaviors, they grow in complexity from the bottom up to the top. And like a pyramid, those upper levels are supported then by the lower levels, and biases at each level negatively impact individuals and, of course, institutions and society at large. And it just becomes increasingly difficult to challenge and dismantle those as behaviors escalate. And so just to reflect again on that initial activity we did last week, when biases go unchecked, that becomes normal. So it's important for us to think about what we think is normal in our own biases, and challenging them is a really great first step again in this conversation. And so another thing, or where we got to on Thursday, we're looking at 6 key components of a welcoming community. There was a short slide, I was running out of time, on having a strength-based perspective. I mean, there's so many angles that you can take up on this. UDLs, or universal design for students, is another wonderful way to go about your curriculum and how you teach your pedagogy. But since we are limited to the time that we have, I wanted to take these 6 ways that we can create a welcoming community and pick things back up here. And so the idea today, again, as just this dedicated space, it is almost 12:45. So technically we have another 45 minutes. I'd really like to spend the time individually and collectively working through some of these ideas, and really taking the steps necessary to make some changes in our own classes and our own cultures that we create. So the 6 key components of a welcoming community by Chapon and Shevin in 2010 are listed here, and under them, which again, I recognize this is probably kind of small, but under them are some ideas for activities that you can first kind of do some work on your own, and then collectively we can come together and share resources, because that was something that was so exciting from Thursday. A shout out to Kate Solis. Again, she works in developing our grants. She's just incredible, but she went and found wonderful webinars. And I know at our own university, there's another lecture that's going to be taking place at the panel on diversity in terms of disability. So I love that idea of being able to share these resources and to collaborate. But I also, again, I want to carve out that time for us to do something with this information. And so the first key component was to create a classroom that's marked by cooperation rather than competition. So maybe that's something that you're able to do today. And so when I'm thinking of a syllabi, we have to include means of assessment. And so, I mean, hopefully you're not sharing, course grades with everyone, and that's, super obvious how competitive things are. But so maybe you're not there, but are there assignments or is there something that you can incorporate that is more cooperative? And cooperative learning, we could do a whole other presentation on that. But it provides, especially students with varying levels of ability, an opportunity to work with their peers. It's in terms of like risk taking, it's much more low level. And it's, again, a way that you can balance those different ability levels, whether that, and thinking of disability in the classroom in higher ed, that could be things like attention, some executive functioning things, just organization and present or access to using computers and different technologies that we have available to us. So by making it more cooperative instead of super individualistic and just on the one person, that provides our students with differing levels of ability, opportunities to feel that they're part of that community. So that might be one area that you're able to look into. Another area, and I feel like Candace did, I saw her slides, Dr. Zepeda, she was the last presenter in this series, and she focused on an anti-racist lens. And it looks like you might have done some work on this in terms of your course description and some of the other languaging in your syllabi. But the second key component of a welcoming community was this idea of inclusion of all students and that no one has to earn their way into the community. And from a syllabi lens, I'm thinking of that in terms of a statement on participation. And this is not something that is required at the university that we are with, but I have seen it at other universities. And so this could be something that you look into, is creating a statement of participation with clear expectations and again, providing opportunities for students to participate in many different ways, allowing verbal and nonverbal participation, depending on your class modality. Maybe they're able to participate on and offline or in person and online. So that's another area that you might want to look at some more. And then the last idea that I had, so both 3 and 4, I think really touch on this, is spending some time creating a diversity or an equity and inclusion statement. And there's, again, so many resources out there. I'm going to provide a couple, and I'm going to provide an example, but these are oftentimes used to handle both key component 3 and 4 to have an environment or an atmosphere, to create an atmosphere which differences are valued and addressed openly. And so having an equity and inclusion statement on your syllabi, or just planning to have this as part of like the different content that you're covering. That's one way to address that one. And then also in creating a welcoming community, you can do this by creating a place that values the integrity of each person. That is, each person is valued in his and her wholeness with multiple identities. So another thing, again, you can have this on the syllabi. It could be something just verbally, a script that you share with your students on the first day, or depending on the content and the material that you cover, maybe this comes up in the different lenses and angles that you cover. I didn't have any ideas for 5 and 6, and if you have ideas, those are things that would be really interesting to see in the chat. If those are something if that inspires you and that's something that you want to work on. But I did want to provide an example from a colleague that I know at the University of Northern Colorado. They do have an equity and inclusion statement that their university shares. And so this might be one that, or an idea too, is thinking about how you could bring this up with upper administration or even your department. I know sometimes departments put together statements that they share, but theirs states that the University of Northern Colorado embraces the diversity of students, faculty, and staff, honors that inherent dignity of each individual, welcomes their unique perspectives, behaviors, and worldviews. And then in this course, people of all races, religions, natural origins, sexual orientations, ethnicities, gender and gender identities, cognitive, physical, and behavioral abilities. So that hits that anti-ableist lens, and socioeconomic and experiences. So course content and campus discussions will heighten your awareness to each other's individual and intersecting identities. And if you would like to report an incident or learn more about identity-based discrimination, backgrounds, religions, immigrant statuses, military or veteran statuses, size and or shapes, you're strongly encouraged to share your rich array of perspectives. And if it has to do with harassment, you could contact this. So this is coming from a university. It's not super personal, but it was an example. Another thing that'll be on here, and like I said, I didn't go to the UDL angle because there's other resources that spend adequate time on that, but this was something from there, a way to look at if you were to get a student accommodation letter and to know what those accommodations are, a way that you can kind of work through what your course would look like for that student and the accommodations that they need, and to anticipate barriers and to still be able to assess them. So I'm going to go back to this slide, and I'm trying to get back. I lost the presentation, but
would you like me to unmute everyone so they can ask questions at this point?
Yes, and so this is, yeah, I want to use this as a time where we can either share resources or you can spend the time, I mean, at this point now, it's 40 minutes, and you can work on your own diversity, inclusion, equity statement, or look at some of the assignments.
We can also make everyone, since we're a small group of 8 people, we can make everyone a panelist so that they can share and they can talk with us.
Yeah, and I see Kate Solis is on, and she had some incredible resources. So she's one. I was thinking, oh, and I see Janet. So there's a group of wonderful academics on here.
And, and I was thinking too, Stephanie, that so if you can you go back to that statement really quickly?
Yeah.
It's the next slide, the 36. Yeah. Okay. So this is something that I know we were talking about in probably in Candace's workshop as well, and then maybe when we were kicking off the series. But we need one I don't know if it's one big statement here on equity and inclusion, but it seems like we could develop one after this entire series, right? That can encompass everyone's presentations and all of these ideas into like one big, like this, like an equity inclusion statement. I was looking at my syllabus right now, and we don't have one, right? We have a statement. We have students with disabilities. We have a statement on academic dishonesty and plagiarism, on a positive learning environment, firearms, and that's about it, and I don't know, that's as far as required, right? But it seems that we could do this, and I don't know if it's just something that we would need to pass through our own faculty assembly, or for others out there who are tuning in outside of the university, and then in our K through 12 system, how would we work on putting in this type of statement into your own syllabus? I don't know if this would inquire you, or this would require you to approach maybe your principal or your the chair of your program to have this included across the board, right? Because everybody should have this within their syllabi. At the university level, at K through 12, whatever you're promoting for your students, something, right? And we have some stuff going on here in the chat right now where Candace, if you want to chime in, that's totally fine, because I think everybody should be unmuted or have the ability to unmute themselves too.
Everybody has the ability to do video, mute, and also share. So everybody was made a panelist.
Thanks. I won't share at this moment because I'm stuffing my face with salad.
Oh.
So Val, interesting that you even brought this point up. So I just met with the provost on Friday, and one of the things out of our list of topics was she was a bit alarmed that the strategic planning groups that have been ongoing for the last 3 years, that there wasn't in the strategic plan a group to work towards equity and inclusion or diversity.
Right?
And
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I declined the offer to lead the group, but she did some convincing, and I felt my work as on the steering committee for the president on revisiting the mission, I felt it gave me some weight to be part of this group as long as I can make serious recommendations to the president. So we met like from 3 to 4 on Friday, and then Mama Mode walked in, and Saturday and Sunday. And so I have yet to send an email out, but part of the responsibilities of this group will be to make some recommendations to the president on implementing what we believe this could either be a standing committee or it could be a rotating committee. One of the things that I think is really important, Val, which leads to your efforts and the team's efforts of this series, is to start with the syllabi. So actually, like and Janet, your name came up, so you're already in it. You just haven't received my email.
That's good. I think that's a good idea.
For those in this group, if you'd be interested in at least maybe, attending the kickoff meeting and then saying, yeah, I don't want to be part of this group. I definitely feel that I want to be as inclusive as possible, and our provost knows I want to be able to make serious changes. And I really appreciate you offering this as an example.
That is great. And for those of you who are tuning in again, outside of LU, I mean, this is our own, universities kind of grappling with our identity as an institution that is committed to social justice efforts, right? But for everyone else, I mean, you have your own struggles, you have your own issues too. But so again, we're here to help, right? We're here to help, but we're also here to learn. So if you have other suggestions on what has worked for you, we are welcome to these suggestions. So I don't know if other universities have these types of statements in their syllabi or have these type of councils or groups. I mean, this is a big push, and I'm so thankful and grateful that our provost is definitely taking the lead in this. That's great. It makes our work a lot easier when you have the support of your administration. So we're really appreciative of that. So if other folks tuning in online, if you've had struggles or, in anything, if you have any comments or concerns or questions or feedback on how we can approach this, and again, thankfully we do have the support of our administration for the most part, but if we're happy to share that information as well.
I had a question about,
Okay.
and so this may be relevant for other people, but on the current statement on disabilities that you do have in your syllabus, does it mention cognitive, physical, and behavioral disabilities, or does it just say disabilities?
So it actually just got revised, right? So we had a new statement that was issued to us at the beginning of the semester. So it states here, it encourages their full participation in all academic programs, including internships and field placements. We have a link for new guidelines, but no, it doesn't state these specific
I don't think
the
it
items
has
you
those
addressed, no.
specific things named. One reason we made the change of the documents is because the name change of the department. So I don't know that any other things have changed, but I think it's a good idea. Definitely.
Because I think sometimes, people who aren't familiar either with disabilities personally or working with those with disabilities, oftentimes they're just thinking of physical or maybe some cognitive, but a lot of times behavioral, goes even from students themselves, like seeking an accommodation, thinking or understanding that is indeed a disability for which you can seek an accommodation, like rather than, not going to class, having to withdraw, etc. So that's why I was thinking it's important, and I appreciated Stephanie, making that distinction and that robust explanation. about the breadth of disabilities. You know, we're talking about
Yeah.
all of the ways it could manifest itself.
And I think I think you made a good point, Caitlin. The other thing I was thinking is maybe even out of this group could maybe some ideas for some disability awareness, like what does it look like if you have this kind of disability? What does it look like? Because I think that sometimes we don't understand what the student is experiencing. I mean, I'm experiencing that right now, even with the bookstore, because I'm arguing with them about physical books for students who need them, and they're like, "Well, this student is a so-and-so major; he shouldn't need that." And I'm saying,
Oh, wow.
that is not for you to decide. You know, that person has this accommodation, so we need to provide it. But I think and I never realized they don't work for us, but I'm just saying, if they don't understand,
Yeah.
does everyone else understand?
Yeah, I thought that was, I don't know if Nicole is able to join us. Nicole, she was able to join us last time via, the Facebook live stream, but Nicole would be definitely somebody there to address and say, well, isn't this kind of like federal law that
It is, and that's what I've been saying too. And honestly, with this, we've had some delays this time, and in the fall we had delays, and I'm just going to be really honest. No one asked me. No one said, "Hey, we're going to do physical text. We're going to do textbook access for everyone. What do you think that means for your population?" Nobody said anything. So when they didn't have a right book, I was like, this isn't good. So now we tried for this semester, and we're still having some bumps, and so it makes me feel like there's more education needed across, and I think it's always good to, to have ongoing training. I'm just saying it makes me feel like everyone doesn't have the same understanding,
And I love that. And I think one of the things and I mentioned this I think last week, but one of the things that came out of disability studies was nothing for us that isn't by us. And again, that's huge in people who stutter, and I know autism. And again, I'm thinking from the lens of communication disabilities, but as Caitlin said, there's all these other realms. But one thing I love about those movements is the person first and sharing those personal narratives and their own personal accounts. And so that might be, again, and confidentiality is such a hard thing here, but typically adults with disabilities at the higher education level are willing to share their own experience and their own lived experience and their own stories. So that might be even something at a local level, which again, I think our institution could do it. I think high schools could do it. And as a speech pathologist, we work with students, especially students who stutter, to share with their classmates and their classes what it is like. And so I wonder too that that's another invitation we could invite students, especially now that we just did that survey, is to share what it's like. And I think that not only educates their peers, but it educates us as educators. And I think
that's a good idea. The perspective,
Met had a really good suggestion last time, or this past Thursday, right? Where we had, and this could be very interdisciplinary too, where we had we had like the film students follow around one of our other students who's in a wheelchair and has it from her perspective, right? That was a suggestion that you had last time, right? I mean, again, like having somebody live like through their eyes. What do they see? What do they, as they're going through these, and now with COVID restrictions, we know that there's certain places that are blocked off and you have to go up this road and you have to go here. So what do folks with these, what are folks trying to have, how are they now having to re-navigate something that they were already trying to navigate and having difficulties with in the first place? So having that type of perspective, and I don't know if we could create it's one of those things where you don't want to just have like a week dedicated and then everybody forgets, or a month and then everybody forgets, because these are things that people live every single day, 365. So I don't know how we can create further awareness, but keep it ongoing, maybe we highlight it particularly during one moment, but then, have this kind of ongoing informational sessions or something throughout the year, right? To remind folks that this is not something that we were reminded of, last month or 2 months ago, but we can keep it ongoing.
I like your idea. One of the things, I don't know how much y'all are aware, but the disabilities, the accessibility services, health services, and counseling, we moved together into Providence. And so we're in the second floor of Providence, and we formed what we're calling the Olu Wellness Center. Anyway, one of our goals is to have a calendar where we're separate, highlighting things from each of our areas, where we would have on SharePoint some information for students and staff and faculty about different things. Like for example, January is Stalker Awareness Month. Like what can you do to be safe when you're walking by yourself, kind of thing. So then what other things are, like October's Dyslexia Awareness, different months would have different things, but I think like highlighting it all together, yes, but then separating out into, just kind of reminders of, are you aware of, what I mean? Just like the different things as they come up, or just putting them in the calendar and spotlighting, hey,
Yeah.
when you're in a wheelchair, like I know one thing I always have my students do is I have, my work studies go around the campus and press the handicap buttons to see if all the doors open. Sometimes they don't. And like when the power was out all that time when we were restricted from entrance, then when it came back on, when everything was unlocked, some of the doors didn't work.
Mm.
You don't think about that until you're the one trying to get in, and then you know what I mean, and you can't get in. So I think those kind of things. I think also like the physical textbook issue, we have some students with conditions that make it very difficult for them to read from a digital book. So then what does it look like when you have to take a break every 30 minutes from reading online, while you're waiting for your book? Yes, you have the digital book in the meantime, but it's going to take you a lot longer to read from that, right?
And that leads me to my next question, Stephanie. So in terms of practices that we can actually do in the classroom, right? So right now, virtual learning is dominating several institutions, right? Both in higher ed and K through 12. It's a new era. How can we make this easier for students, who have maybe some type of visual impairment? We're staring at a screen. It's going to give them, it gives me a headache, right? Or how it may impact the way that they learn. So what are some helpful suggestions for our virtual learning environment right now to make kind of accommodations for students? And then also if you could speak about, again, the terminology. I know like that on Thursday, we were kind of ending with the language that we use and what is best to use, I guess. So, and as we're thinking about how we're going to craft the statement and put it in our syllabi, what language do we use? If I've used different, and I heard you say also differently abled. We look at neurodiversity. We look at the other things that Kate posted up here, right? These types of. So I don't know if you have anything like on language, and then something on for virtual learning, what we can do to help students.
Sorry, trying to mute myself. So many screens. Am I sharing? Can you see my PowerPoint again?
Yes, looks good.
Because again, one of the things that's been brought up is when we think of abilities, there's just so many lenses. And I think my expertise and my lens is communication disabilities. So again, I think visual impairments, hearing impairments, physical impairments. Typically, I'm only working with language impairments, which language and condition kind of go hand in hand, but not so much like attention or executive functioning in and of itself. But this was a resource that I liked because it takes like this like individual student perspective. And so I should have pulled up an accommodation letter and blacked it out and to use as an example. But I think the accommodations that we get at the college level, they don't state what the disability is. It just is working. It lists accommodations that can help that student be more successful in your classroom. And one of the other things that you're supposed to do is meet with that student. Yes, because of FERPA and HIPAA. But you're supposed to meet with that student and discuss the accommodations that they have and really kind of get another plan on top of that in place. So I am thinking of, I have had an accommodation to enlarge print, or actually let me do, so to enlarge print on exams, and it'll say that. And so if I were to look at that accommodation with this worksheet and with that student, and you can even sit down and have this conversation with your student, especially at the higher education level. I mean, we're dealing with, or these are adults, and so they know themselves best. And so this could be something that you work through maybe before and then with that student, but if their accommodation is enlarging that print, so let me just do this first one. Where will that student struggle with different parts of the lesson? So the language might be to increase print on the exams, but this could target or flag me to know that I need to increase print on the PowerPoints, or I need to make sure that student knows, again, like you said, Valerie, online, that they've met with someone or that they meet with me outside of class during office hours, where I can show them all the different ways to zoom in on their own computer, so that even if I haven't enlarged something, they know where that button is down on the bottom right hand corner. Or if they have a touch screen, how they can do that. Then how can I specifically target their struggle with support? And again, if my support is looking over the content that I'm providing, meeting with them to show them the different resources that they have on their computer, on their phone, just having an honest conversation, like how are you accessing materials? Are you doing it at a desktop or a laptop or the school's computer or your phone? I mean, that's something I always hear. We might even have that in our syllabus, like it's not ideal to do this on your phone, but if they're doing it on their phone, can we meet with them and have that conversation? How will I know if my supports actually help? And again, that's a conversation you can have with them. Like, hey, can you send me an email if I forget? Can you send me something on the side to let me know if if I provided something on the fly, material that I wasn't able to enlarge the print. So I think you can go through different accommodations. You can use these different lenses to help you both anticipate, then sit down and make the plan with them. And then, like any good data point, we want to be able to test it and know if it's working. So this is something that's on there. But like I said, I think it's hard to make grand statements because each accommodation is different. Those different areas of disability provide different opportunities to relook at our curriculum and the way we present our pedagogy, the way we teach. So Janet's over here. She has suggestions with ways to do this.
So I was just going to say, this is just an idea, and it just kind of evolved because we do have some students, probably more now than before, that have some differences in their cognitive ability and their communication ability. I know I work with probably at least 3 or 4 students that I know have autism. And so when we went online, they're very concrete. So the online is something. So this is just an idea, completely. I love the chart, by the way. I really love it. One thing I'm doing with one of the students is that we're tutoring. I'm going to call it that, but it's not really tutoring. What we're doing is we meet on WebEx. He shares his screen. We go through what he has to do for his classes. We talk about it, like, what does that mean? Where do I put that? Just, and he has a high GPA. It's not that, but he needs more interaction than, what I mean, than what we're able to provide this way. So we just been meeting, and I was wondering how much it helped, because it actually all started with Jessica Hayjack, because he's a music student. And she said, I love this kid. He's trying so hard, but he cannot navigate. He doesn't know where he is. He can't keep up with things. We started working on it, and she gave me access to his classes. But then I realized I don't really need that. He just needs to be able to share with me, right? Because he's the one that needs to know how to get on. So he's been showing me, and first we worked on the music classes. This was last semester. And then, I don't know, the 3rd or 4th lesson in, he said, could we look at my history class? And I said, absolutely. So he pulls it up and he shows me, okay, this is what it says. What do you think I should do? And I said, well, what are the directions? So we start going over it together. Anyway, so he contacted me this semester on his own. And I was really pleased because it's something that obviously is working for him. So we've met already 4 times. We're going to meet every Wednesday evening at least. But then if he has a problem, I reserved like a little Saturday time for him because he needs like a little bit, like he gets stuck if he doesn't know what to do, he just gets frustrated, you know, like overwhelmed and frustrated. But just walking through it has helped him. And it's not a big, I mean, we spend like 45 minutes to an hour, but he can show me anything he has a question about. And like one thing for him, he doesn't like to talk in front of people, but he's taking oral communication. So he has to record a speech. So we talked about that and he said, record? And he was just kind of, you know, and I said, yes. And we talked about why, you know, why he's lucky because he's not going to be in front of the whole class. He's going to record it and, you know, what the benefits of that would be. But I think that it really helped him to talk through it because this last time when I talked to him on Saturday, he said, I've already got my speech going. And I was like, good. So I was thinking he's going to need me to help him get a topic, but no, he's working on it. He just needs, and like he said to me, the oral communication professor has this amazing Blackboard already set up, but she has everything for the whole semester. So he said, that's really overwhelming. I said, well, you're not going to look at all of it right now. Just look at the part that's for the next week or two. You know what I mean? You need to know what's due later, but she's not going to keep adding. She's ready for the whole semester. So just go ahead and, you know, and so he seems better with it. You know what I mean? But I feel like that's just one simple thing, but I don't mind if someone refers, like they referred that student to me. He's already my student anyway. And with our coaching not being the same that it was, you know, our success coaching, I've been telling people I would rather you go ahead and refer that student back to me and say, hey, why don't you work with Janet on trying to navigate your classes? Because if it's just something that they don't understand, you know what I mean? I'd rather go through that.
And Janet, first of all, you are incredible. And I think even as new faculty, I forget all the resources that are out there for us as faculty. And I think that's just so great. Part of this creating awareness, not only for our students, but I think another thing for faculty to recognize, like we need to ask questions and, you know, we're not going to know it all. And that's in the pursuit of improvement. And so I think that's really, really great too, is recognizing that there's wonderful resources like you out there. And that, and some of the things that you said too made me think, you know, what's great for one student, having the whole course up there is overwhelming to the next, you know? So again, it's like, there's always, you know, going to be that individual lens that we have to take for each student. So anyways, thanks, Janet. You're incredible.
So for folks joining us outside the institution, find your Janet, right? Find that person who works with this particular population. And if you're if you're at a large university, you should have someone that is dedicated. You should have a whole office that's dedicated to this. For K through 12, that might be a little more difficult to navigate, but there should still be someone who has this information that you can go directly to, that you can either refer your students to, or that you could approach and ask for resources, you know, so like something like this that Stephaine has given us, right?
And K through 12 actually, I think, is set up better for these sort of things, especially with disabilities, because based on IDA and some of those other acts that I went over, they have to have an IEP, they have to have a plan in place. So what makes it complicated at the higher ed level is that doesn't just continue. I mean, students are now adults and there should have been a transition plan in place, but it really is up to that student to go reach out and to talk about those services. But I think the other thing that I personally see that, again, that Kate brought up is some of these other disabilities that sometimes aren't identified until you're in college, until you hit that cognitive ceiling, things like attention deficit disorder. So those are things too that we have students who it's the first time they're trying to navigate that, and they've been successful to a certain level. And so then it's an identity shift, and it's, you know, they haven't been through the IEP process. But I do think if you are a K through 12 educator, you should have, you do have professionals on your campus, such as the speech language pathologist. There's reading specialists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, the nurse, the special education teacher. So if you have any concerns on students, reach out to them. There's a great referral process. Response to intervention can lead to screenings and assessment. So I think they actually they're doing things a little bit better than in some higher education settings. That was my.
Cool, thank you.
I'm wondering what your thoughts are, and I guess Janet particularly, but I was just thinking about that transition, right? That's really difficult if they have had a plan in K-12, I think it's individualized education plan, and then there's no transition, or they don't even realize some of these challenges they're facing might be due to a disability. And I was just thinking this could be like totally off, and that's fine. But if there would be interest in any type of like support group where just students can get together and, you know, talk about these things, I don't know if there would be interest in that, but I was just thinking, like, you know, it's always helpful to know that you're not alone, right? And I'm not the only one experiencing this, and also just to share like what worked for me, or like what really sucks, or whatever.
I think it's a great idea.
Mhm.
Because I think there is that. And the other thing is sometimes students, even though we ask and we offer, they have to self-refer, and sometimes they don't. And like the student I was mentioning earlier, he didn't self-refer when he first came. But there was definitely a professor is the one who said he's really struggling, but I know how bright he is. I can see it, but he's really struggling, and I think that there might be something. So I start talking to the student, and he says, "Oh, well, you know, I have this from high school, but I never showed it to you." I said, "Oh, okay, well, let's work on it." You know, so I think that I think we have to, you know, encourage people. And what I always tell them too is no one's going to know. That's one of the beauty things of the higher ed disability stuff, is nobody knows what your condition is, because you have rights. You have FERPA rights. We just know what we have to do, but we don't tell anyone your private information. And people that aren't going to teach you aren't going to know that you have accommodations. And I tell them too, we have a lot of students that have accommodations. You don't know about them because we don't tell people. You know, you don't know, you know, but we have a lot, and there's lots of reasons, you know.
I just want to add to that because that's so good. But I do think, again, back to syllabi and what we can do as educators, I think taking the time, you know, sometimes we roll our eyes at like syllabus day where we go over that. But I do think that that's one thing educators can do, is really talk about that section in our syllabi on accessibility services. I love the semantics behind that. And really talking about that and taking some of that stigma out. I know I tell my students every if you struggle with attention, you know, please go have these conversations. Like, that's part of being successful in college. And so I think having that conversation is really important. The other thing I would love, if Nicole is here, maybe we can reach out to her, but if I'm still sharing my screen, I have the ADA, their definition up. And that's one of the things that I think is so interesting about their definition is not only is it, you know, people who have documented physical, mental impairments, but also people who have a record of such impairment, and individuals who do not have a disability but are regarded as having a disability. And that's again where we run into this issue as adults. There's people who stutter who it is not considered an impairment to them. There's people with autism who that's just who they are. So they may not seek out those accommodations, yet I wonder, with the legality behind that as a professor, are you still able then to have a conversation and get some documented accommodations, even if the student isn't the one, you know, like they're not starting that conversation. I'm curious. I don't have the answer there, but I'd be curious to that. What that means in terms of the ADA.
I mean, I think
to add to that. Well, Stephanie, I had this question too, and then maybe because this really follows that, and then maybe Janet, you can answer both of these. Like, okay, so if you have a student who knows that they learn differently, but does not have the documentation, right, to prove this, but they should have these types of accommodations because they know themselves and they know how they learn and such. So, what can they do if they can't, maybe they don't have health insurance either to go to the doctor to physically get this documentation. So what resources can they do? Now, as a professor, I don't need a documentation to tell me, oh, the student needs whatever. So if they need X, then I'm going to give them X, right? So, but I know that to get that required documentation, to have it recognized by the institution and then everyone else, they need that. So, but what if they don't have access to medical professionals to provide that? What can they do?
Well, we can refer them to the community counseling center if they need, like say they might think they have a disability, like a learning disability or something like that, or they might think that there's some other need that they have. We can refer them there for some kind of testing. Also, if they're having trouble, even if they don't have a formal diagnosis of like attention or anxiety or depression or something, if they're seeing counseling, like our counseling services, we can, the counseling people can make a, they can fill out the form for them saying, oh, they're showing characteristics of, anxiety, or they have a history of. The other thing is at higher ed, we are not as, we don't have quite the high standard of documentation. We have to have documentation, but it doesn't have to be as much as extensive as it would in K-12. So even if you have a student, like say Valerie has a student in her class that has dyslexia, and maybe his testing was from 6th grade, we don't need a new test. We just need to have something that from before saying that he had it. And we can, they can get their school records. We can even do temporary accommodations. Like right now, when people are suffering with COVID, we might have students that might have surgery, or maybe they're recovering from having a baby. Those are all things that you could get a temporary accommodation for. So if anyone reaches out to you saying that they might have something like that, we can help them with temporary things too. But we can also refer them to, if they have any documentation that we can use, we can refer them. I usually will give them some temporary accommodations while we try to get them set up. Like say they're really struggling with their emotions or whatever it is, I'm going to set them up with counseling. And while we get that set up, I'm going to give them temporary accommodations until we have something from our counseling department saying what's going on, just so that they're supported, in that time. But definitely, we can also look at, even if the student doesn't foresee, like they don't see themselves as disabled, like we were saying, regarded as an impairment, if they have something that is documented for that, we can still give them that, those types of accommodations. I think we have to think about what's reasonable, like what can we provide reasonably, or what do we need to provide? What's our duty to provide? And then like one person said, well, I don't want that person to be my doctoral chair. Well, that's not really an accommodation, you know what I mean? But but what about saying, that they want to practice before they do their presentation. That's not the same thing. You know what I mean? So kind of thinking about those things, kind of thinking about how can we make it a little bit more concrete? How can we, example, right now, we have a student who's a psychology in the psychology program, and he's studying school psychology. He has an impairment, which he cannot use his hands very well to write. So we are providing him technology so that he can learn how to test the students and everything, and we're loaning him the technology so that he can still do all the requirements of the courses, and because really in life he's going to be able to do it virtually if he needs to, right, or on the computer. So we're providing that for him as a reasonable accommodation so he can participate. So I mean, there's things we can do, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you. And so I guess we're getting here to close to 1:30. We got 3 more minutes. So Stephanie, if you would like some, I guess, kind of last words on kind of wrapping up things that we can do individually as educators, and things that we can do. I know some, I guess, more broadly as to, once we refer it to somebody, to our Janet, right, to our person who is handling and the new wellness center. I don't know if Stephanie, you want to kind of wrap everything up, and but for me, I definitely want to hear a little bit again on the these individual things we can do as educators to help students, and then from there we refer them to these wonderful individuals, like Janet, who works in our let me make sure I get the new office correct. I don't have the services. No. It's not the SSD office. Janet, if you tell me again, the new office.
I typed it in.
Okay.
Accessibility services.
Accessibility services. Okay, so I guess
I just put it more positive
accessibility
because
services.
it's being negative as a disability. We want to look at it as providing access.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Well, and thank you again to Valerie and Aimee for hosting and doing all the back end of this. And Janet, I should have done this together. You're incredible. And again, I love the fact that we were able to meet today and talk about and combine forces and backgrounds and experiences, because we tend to work in our little individual silos. So I just want to recap and say that the things that I brought to the table in the conversation were that, it starts with us, and it just starts with self-reflection and just getting a good baseline on our thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs. So we looked at the historical way that people thought about disabilities, and then that led to the actions and the results that those individuals lived in. And then I talked about where we are today in this idea of a social model, and just really flipping that script in terms of, this thing that a student is dealing with to, how could I accommodate it where the thing isn't even an issue anymore, where we're still getting at the course content and the student learning outcomes that I have. So just barriers that are in place. And so from there, ways to create an inclusive environment. We can look at the classroom culture and just the expectations and that we have, and we can be explicit about that. There's this idea of the hidden curriculum, and it's the things that sometimes either we're not aware of or we just don't talk about. But sharing those, and we can do that through many different things, like having statements on our syllabi. We discussed the equity and inclusion statement, or a diversity statement. Then there are, so that's creating a culture and a climate that is set on and being inclusive. Then curriculum, we didn't really get to that, but there are assignments that you can do. You can try and include voices of differing abilities, and you can highlight that when you talk about the authors or the material that you're providing. And then pedagogy was another thing that we didn't get a lot of time spent on, but the UDLs, you can Google that, Universal Design for Learning. There's incredible resources out there, and you can go over the way you set up your means of assessment and include things like cooperative learning, and just good access to everyone. I give the example of ways to go over print size with students, and just, again, small print. I did that today. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so small. Nobody can see this. So, being aware of just those little things, because if it's good for one person, it should be good for most people. So thank you again for everyone being here and sharing your experience and talents. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with everyone. So thanks again to everyone that
Yes, thank you, everybody. And we had a great couple of questions that are popping up here in the chat now, in terms of how to create a warm, welcoming, non-judgmental environment within the classroom. And then this is from Colin Grinnan too. Would it be wise to have the Lake Weekly highlight conditions, and perhaps on individuals who cope? How do they cope? What can we do to make life easier? And then in the university environment, or in your K-12 institution. And then he's requesting also best practices or tip sheets for educators. So I think this is great, and we're putting these all together on for Olu on our academic SharePoint. But for everyone else, we're going to create another website to where all these workshops will be available to you, along with the PowerPoint presentations. And I really like this idea, Colin, of having, again, this kind of one-sheeters, these little cheat sheets, if you will, on tips and strategies as we're tackling each of these topics. So thank you so much again, everybody, and we welcome further conversation. Obviously, these topics that we're addressing now, I mean, it's not like we're done with them. You know, when we're finished talking about neurodiversity, we're finished talking about anti-racist strategies. We're not finished, okay? So we want these conversations to be ongoing, and we welcome feedback. So we appreciate it again. Thank you all. And please join us next month as we continue this series. So in February, we have Professor Rosalind Evans. She will be looking at deconstructing these binaries around gender and sexuality in her workshop entitled Moving Beyond the Binary, Illuminating Inclusivity in Academia. So that will be on February the 25th, and her syllabus redesign workshop will follow on March 1st. So we got about a month. So we look forward to this next workshop provided by Dr.